White supremacy is stupid. Any idea that makes one race better than any other is stupid. White supremacist Americans say they built this country. That's stupid. They didn't. America was built by African slaves on land stolen from Native Americans. Yes, white people did the enslaving and stealing, but does that make the white race superior? Does enslaving make the enslaver better than the enslaved? Does stealing make the thief better than the victim? If the white people are better, why was our country built by black hands? Surely white people could build better themselves if they are the better stock of humanity. If white people are better, why was our country built on land stolen from Native Americans? Surely the land of white people was a better place to build their country. It is ironic that the same white people who were persecuted in Europe, their own land, based on their religion, would cross the Atlantic and build a nation that persecutes other people based on not only their religion, but also their color, race, creed, and sex. What a galling lack of self-awareness. Thankfully, even back when white men owned slaves, there were other white men who rebuked that barbarity, or at least hoped that future generations would cure the inequality and the accumulating inequity. Thankfully, they drafted and enacted our Constitution that could be amended to expand personal liberties like the Bill of Rights did. The amendments provision in our Constitution and the Bill of Rights show us that our founders wanted our country to become an increasingly more perfect union. They knew they themselves fell short of advancing important social causes, but they hoped future generations would fix those errors. Through generations, thankfully enough, white men passed and ratified the abolition of slavery and the vestiture of citizenship upon all those born in the United States. White men passed and ratified the right of women to vote. These things go to show that a vast majority of white men back then and now do not subscribe to the superiority nonsense. But a loud and boisterous segment of the population clings to these idiotic notions of racial purity, remigration, and civilizational integrity. All ideologies driven into people over time through forced generational inundation. These same people who consider themselves superior don't want better education or upward socioeconomic mobility. They would rather see black and brown people suffer than have the means to pay for health insurance. But of course, that's not the reality. They need education and social assistance more than most others, but they are made to believe that they don't. Not more than they want racial purity in our country. Or at least that's what their great leader tells them in so many words. And they believe him because they trust him, no matter how unfounded that trust and no matter how many times he lets them down. Identity politics to divide and conquer keeps Trump's MAGA movement going. I say all of this in a world sheltered away from the savagery of our past. In a world that has come a long way in showing respect to every human being, regardless of where they are from, the color of their skins, their sex, sexuality, gender, and what religion they practice. Yet, fear, hate, and prejudice exists throughout modern society. It is what Donald Trump and his regime use to divide Americans and rule the country. We are seeing hatred surge in America now more than we have in the last 100 years. So we need to push back against it now with even greater force than we have before. Because now we know what hate and prejudice does to people and countries. Because now we know that those who stoke hatred and fear by dividing people do so not for the betterment of society, but for their own selfish greed for wealth and power. Because now a vast majority of American society realizes that hate and prejudice weakens us. Because we now know that America progresses fastest when we are all treated equally, or as equal as we have been able to make it. Remember, women still don't make the same money as men for the same jobs. Racism still impacts voting rights, job availability, college admissions, property value, among other things. Bigotry still walks the halls of our government. But despite prejudice, America must move forward because a vast majority of us see and understand the strength of diversity and the need to refocus on building a more perfect union. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.